All right. So Ed talked about triggers and how we get triggered and all that stuff. And I thought it was interesting. And I just thought I'd ask this question. One of the first things you said when you started the message on Sunday with this idea of triggers is that being triggered, or that language that we use, tends to be kind of sensitive to a lot of people these days.
It's a trigger on both sides.
It is a trigger in and of itselp. So I was just wondering, let's talk about that a little bit.
Yeah,
Why is that?
I don't know if you all noticed in the service, whichever one you were in, I'm not trying to take attendance on either one of you, that people laughed at the word when I first said it, and then I said, "Hey, I'm not going to be making fun of this." And then I could tell, oh
yeah,
they were a little triggered about that.
Yeah.
The whole thing is it's interesting to me how everything in our world is so incredibly divided.
Yes, and very sensitive.
Very sensitive.
It feels as if to wade into almost any topic these days, I'm very cautious,
Yes.
and I don't know why that is.
Well, and I think when you talk about the term trigger too, I think it's interesting that I think just how everything in our world gets so easily politicized. There tends to be one side that of the political. So I'll just say on the left tends to be the ones that people tend to point at and go, "You're so easily triggered."
That's right.
Triggered's the word. You're so sensitive is the word. But I would say based on even what you're saying, people as well, just as much on the right are easily triggered. They just don't use the word.
Well,
they're just as easily offended, but it's just about different things.
Yeah.
And when you talk about
the fact that it makes me offended that you're so easily triggered
Right.
is evidence that you
are triggered.
right,
that I had to tell you how sensitive you are, and I had to call you a name over it is evidence that I also have the same thing happening.
I think at its core, the reason why it comes out, and this may be such a high level that it's not helpful, but I think at its core, why it happens is because of how hyper individualistic we are. And what I mean is, I tend to really only care about seeing the world through my lens, and I think that happens really in every environment. And so certain words or certain events or certain actions I do view solely through my lens, and either I become very offended based on something you said that may not have been meant to trigger me because I only can see it through that lens, or on the other side, I may do or say something to trigger you. You tell me it, but because I'm only care about viewing it through my lens, I go, "That's your problem. You got to deal with it. I didn't say anything." And so it's easy to make triggers a laughing matter because I go, "Wow, you're so sensitive," but I don't care about seeing the world from your point of view. Vice versa, if I'm the one who's often very triggered, I can only see it through my lens and go, "Well, maybe they didn't mean it that way, or maybe that didn't happen." And I think really what Jesus invites us to is a world where, and this is where I mean very high level, where the way it gets talked about in theology is a Trinitarian worldview, which means the three persons, that we live in this communal relationship with God and other people, that I am sensitive to your needs, as if you were me, as if you were a part of me. And so when you come to me and say, you talk about marriage, when my wife comes to me and says, "Hey, when you make jokes about this thing, or when you talk about this in public, or when you do this, and I know you don't mean anything by it," which I'm sure all of our wives, and we may have even said to them, my wife has said it to me, so "I know you don't mean anything by it, and there's this thing in me that gets very, I don't mean anything by it, so really, that's on you.
It's your
You've
problem.
got to figure
So
it out."
why bring it up to me if
right.
you know I didn't mean anything by it?
Right. As someone who is as marriage is very much this, I don't want to use maybe symbiotic is not the right, but we are one. We are one
right. That's right.
flesh. There's a part of me that has to go, if this hurts you, then it should hurt me. Therefore, I'm going to stop because I don't want to hurt myself.
And as your wife, she should, as the oneness you are supposed to have, she should be able to bring that to you.
Correct.
And it be okay. And so, and you do have that reaction, and both of you come at it from together and come to the middle and work on it together. That's the way it's supposed to be done anyway.
And that and that really is the difference with the Christian worldview. That is the way we should approach every relationship, is that when you come to me in this vulnerable state and you say, "This does trigger me." Now, it may be that because of your past, there certainly is work you need to do on your part, so you're not as easily triggered. But as someone who loves you, I certainly wouldn't go, "Oh, that's the button."
Thanks for telling me. Now I'll be hitting that a lot.
Yes.
Right. It's why it's never made sense to me when people say they now want to be called this.
Right.
And like it's a bad thing. I'm going, okay,
Okay.
they just clarified to me. I mean, if you had a nickname that I'd known the whole time and you finally have the courage to say to me, I don't like that nickname, and I continue to call it to you, I mean, I'm not just going, oh, well, you used to be okay. No, I've never been okay. I just finally got okay telling you that's a problem for me. That's not a problem for
Right.
you. That I should just, if I love you, I'm going to go, okay.
Yes. And I think on the other side, so we were talking about it, if something does trigger me, it is natural for me to want to put that off on somebody else
Sure.
and say, you need to fix what you're doing. Once again, not saying that, as you said, I should be able to say, hey, this triggers me, but I should also have hey, because we're in this oneness relationship, I don't want you to have to carry the whole weight. So let me fix my side of it, you fix your side of it, and we'll both be better for it.
It's the whole thing we said in the last 2 series ago, the whole plank in your eye kind
Yes,
of thing.
that's right.
Yes.
That's where it starts. I got to figure out my stuff without putting it on you before I can then work it out to you know, with your stuff.
We both have a responsibility. That's not, I mean, Jesus never says, don't tell the other person about the speck in
Right.
their
That's
eye.
right.
He says, get the
says,
plank
then.
out so that
That's
you
right.
can help him get his.
So you can see clearly.
You can see clearly then. I can see clearly then to help this guy.
Yep.